I remember that morning like it was a prelude to a nightmare I never wanted to live through. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when we loaded the last of our backpacks into the old rattling van. I glanced at my friends, 6 of us in total, laughing, joking, the kind of carefree energy only university students could muster. There was Reza, our self-appointed navigator, who already had a map sprawled across his lap. Tanvir, the class clown, constantly nudging jokes out even in the pre-dawn light. Saba and Layla, sisters who insisted on carrying far more than necessary, probably to look adventurous. And then there was Imran, quiet, calculating, always observing more than participating. And me, Arif, recording the whole trip in my head. Or so I thought. The mountain we were heading toward wasn't famous, not in any touristy sense. Locals called it Shonar Pahar, the Golden Mountain, a name that sounded inviting, almost magical. But even as our van rumbled down the winding road, I noticed the subtle unease in the air, the kind of feeling that something isn't quite right, though you can't put your finger on it. When we arrived at the base, the sun had just begun to rise, painting the horizon in hues of orange and gold. The mountain looked beautiful, majestic even, with mist curling around its slopes like restless spirits. We were all buzzing with excitement, taking photos, setting up GoPros, and arguing over who would carry what. It was the perfect day for a hike, or so we thought. Before we even took our first step on the trail, an old man appeared from behind a cluster of trees. His clothes were tattered, and his face was lined with decades of sun and wind. "You shouldn't go too far," he said, his voice low and raspy, eyes darting nervously toward the mountain's shadowed paths. The mountain, it doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. We laughed it off. I even joked back, "Thanks for the warning, Grandpa. We'll be fine." Tanvir added, "Yeah, don't worry. We're professionals. We know how to hike." The old man's eyes narrowed, and he shook his head. "The mountain has its own rules. You follow your path, but it might not lead you back. Some trails never end." We ignored him, of course. Who listens to cryptic warnings from strangers? At least, not until the trail has swallowed you whole. The first few hours were blissful. Birds chirped, the wind whispered through pine branches, and the forest floor was a patchwork of sunlight and shadows. We joked, shared snacks, and occasionally broke into fits of laughter. The kind that echoes in the woods and makes it feel like the world itself is alive with us. Then, as we ascended, the air grew colder and the mist thickened. At first, it was a gentle fog curling around the tree trunks, picturesque almost. But soon, the visibility dropped. Shapes in the fog seemed to shift when we weren't looking directly at them. I caught myself thinking I saw figures moving between the trees, tall, dark, just beyond the corner of my eye. But every time I looked straight at them, they vanished. "Probably just shadows," I said aloud, though my voice lacked conviction. Tanvir chuckled nervously. "Yeah, Arif's finally letting the horror movies get to him." By midday, we reached a small clearing, the kind that feels like the mountain itself is holding its breath. We set down our backpacks and sat to rest, drinking water and nibbling on granola bars. The fog had thickened to a near-impenetrable curtain. I noticed Reza frowning at his GPS. "Guys, this doesn't make sense," he said. "According to this, we should be halfway to the ridge by now, but we haven't even passed the big oak we saw 30 minutes ago." I shrugged. "Maybe the trail loops a bit? Or the GPS is acting up." "No," Reza said, his voice tight. "Something's off. Look around. You've been following that ridge line." "It's wrong." A silence fell over us. The wind seemed to pick up, whistling through the pines like a warning. Then came the sound, the faintest whisper, almost carried on the wind. I froze. Did anyone else hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Saba tilted her head. "Hear what?" The whisper came again, this time slightly clearer, though still indistinct. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like someone calling my name. Or at least something very close to it. "Guys, seriously?" Tanvir said, trying to sound casual, but even he glanced around nervously. Layla wrapped her arms around her knees. Maybe it's just the wind? But I knew the wind doesn't mimic voices. I knew the wind doesn't speak in whispers that sound like your own name. We packed up quickly, our laughter gone, replaced by a tense, uneasy energy. The trail ahead seemed darker, the mist almost alive as it coiled around tree trunks like serpents. Every step I took felt heavier, as if the mountain itself resisted our presence. Around mid-afternoon, we stumbled upon an old stone marker, half buried in moss. It had strange symbols etched into it, symbols I didn't recognize. Reza examined it. "I've never seen anything like this before," he murmured. "It's ancient." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. There was something wrong about this place. Something that wasn't just the fog or the shadows. Something that lingered, watching us. As evening approached, we decided to set up camp for the night. The sun was dipping below the mist-shrouded ridges, casting long, unnatural shadows across the clearing. We gathered firewood, and as the flames flickered to life, the forest around us seemed to hold its breath. It started with the sounds, faint, soft, like footsteps crunching dead leaves, but not ours. Then came the whispers again, circling the camp, impossible to locate. "Guys, seriously, this isn't funny anymore," I said, clutching my flashlight like a lifeline. The others were silent, eyes wide, scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. And then it happened. One of the students screamed, a short, sharp scream that cut through the night like a knife. We turned to see Tanvir pointing at the tree line. My heart froze. There, just beyond the reach of the firelight, I saw glowing eyes. Dozens of them. Not animal eyes. Human, almost, but wrong. They shimmered, reflecting the firelight in a way that made them seem like molten gold. No one spoke. We didn't move. We just stared. And then, as quickly as they appeared, the eyes vanished. We spent the night in near silence, taking turns keeping watch, our nerves shredded. Every crack of a branch, every rustle in the mist, made our hearts leap. I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the old man's warning, the strange whispering, the glowing eyes. A creeping sense that this mountain had a memory, and that memory included us. By the time dawn broke, the mist had not lifted. It had only thickened, curling around the trees like smoke. Our journey had only just begun, yet something told me we were already lost, and the mountain was watching. We packed up as quickly as we could, our bodies tense, every sense straining to catch the smallest movement in the mist. The fire from the night before was reduced to smoldering embers, barely warming our chilled fingers. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were the crunch of leaves beneath our boots and the occasional gasp of cold air. The trail that had seemed clear the day before now twisted in impossible ways. Every ridge and bend looked familiar, yet somehow different, as if the mountain itself had rearranged itself overnight. Reza kept checking his GPS, frowning more and more with each step. "This isn't right," he muttered under his breath. "We should have reached the waterfall by now, but it's not here. And the trail markers..." He trailed off, staring at the faint paint on a tree trunk that wasn't where it should have been. "Maybe we just missed a turn?" Saba suggested nervously, trying to sound optimistic. But even she didn't sound convinced. I swallowed hard, trying to calm the growing panic inside me. There was something suffocating about the fog, as if it were alive, pressing in around us. I felt like the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting. Hours passed. Or maybe it was only minutes. Time seemed off. Each step we took felt like we were moving in circles. Every familiar landmark repeated itself, over and over, as though the mountain was mocking us. Tanvir, who had been trying to keep spirits high with jokes, went quiet. Even he couldn't laugh at the creeping dread that wrapped around us like a cold, Wet blanket. Then came the first disappearance. We were crossing a narrow ridge when Imran, who had been walking behind me, suddenly shouted, "Wait, where's Layla?" We all froze. I turned, my stomach dropping, and scanned the fogged forest. She wasn't there. "Not anywhere. Layla?" Saba's voice trembled. She was right here." Reza stepped forward, squinting into the mist. "Maybe she wandered off to..." A scream cut him off. High-pitched, short, and horrifying. I recognized it immediately. It was Layla. But the sound came from all around us, distorted, echoing in impossible directions. The fog seemed to swallow her voice, then push it back at us, twisted and warped. We ran toward the sound, shouting her name, hearts pounding. But when we reached the last spot we'd seen her, there was nothing. No footprints, no sign that she had ever been there. Only the fog, thick and unyielding, curling around trees and rocks like fingers reaching out to grab us. I can't see anything," Tanvir shouted, panic overtaking him. His usual bravado was gone. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. "Stay together," I ordered. "We don't split up." We moved cautiously, linking arms, every nerve on edge. That's when I saw it. Just at the edge of my vision, a dark figure slipping between the trees. I blinked and it was gone. "You guys saw that, right?" I whispered, trying to sound rational, though my throat was dry. Reza nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's following us." The forest seemed to close in, the fog growing denser with every step. Strange shapes appeared in the mist, glimpses of figures that vanished when we tried to focus on them. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, then snapped back to normal. The mountain was alive, I realized, and it was feeding on our fear. Then the whispers returned, soft at first, almost lost in the wind, calling names we didn't even recognize. But gradually they became clearer, insistent. "Arif! Arif! Turn back!" I spun around. "Who's there?" My voice was louder than I intended, cracking under the stress. Only the fog answered, thick and suffocating. Reza grabbed my shoulder. "Don't listen to it," he said urgently. "It's trying to confuse us." But the more we tried to ignore it, the louder it became. Names we hadn't heard in years. Voices from our memories. Some joyful, some accusing, swirled around us. Every whisper felt like a hand on my shoulder, every echo like a clawing at my mind. Hours, or maybe days, passed. The trail that had seemed simple at the start had transformed into a labyrinth of trees, rocks, and endless mist. Our water ran low, our energy dwindled, and every step became heavier. And then we found the tree. It was enormous, ancient, its trunk twisted like it had been warped by centuries of wind and storm. But what made my blood run cold were the scratches, hundreds of them, jagged and chaotic, carved deep into the bark. Some looked like names, others looked like symbols, similar to the ones we'd seen carved into the stone marker yesterday. Saba stepped forward, trembling. This isn't natural," she whispered. "Stay back," I said, my heart racing. I pressed my hand against the trunk, feeling the rough bark under my fingers. The scratches seemed fresh, as if something or someone had been here recently. That's when I noticed them. Eyes. Small, black, reflective eyes peering at us from the shadows between the roots. And then more. Dozens of them all staring, unblinking, calculating. "Run!" Tanvir screamed, and we did. Sprinting blindly through the mist, our breaths ragged, the ground slippery beneath our boots. Branches tore at our clothes, roots tripped us, and the whispers became deafening. Mocking, laughing, calling our names, demanding something we didn't understand. We didn't stop until we collapsed in a small clearing, gasping for air. No one spoke for a long time. The only sounds were the wind and the faint, persistent whispers in the distance. I don't know where we are," Reza admitted, panic cracking his voice. "The trail, it's gone. The trail doesn't exist anymore." I felt a cold knot in my stomach. That's when I realized something terrifying. The mountain didn't just hide the path, it erased it. Every step we took, every choice we made, seemed to be under its control. The forest, the fog, the shadows, they weren't just scenery. They were alive, and they were guiding us. Somewhere we didn't want to go. We set up a makeshift camp that night, huddling close together, hands shaking, eyes darting at every flicker in the fog. Sleep was impossible. Every rustle, every snap of a twig made us jump. And yet, somewhere in the distance, faint but unmistakable, we heard laughter, not human laughter, cold, cruel, echoing laughter that seemed to circle the camp. It wasn't coming from any one place. It was everywhere, and I knew, with a sinking certainty, that we weren't alone. The mountain had already claimed its first victim, and it was watching us closely, waiting for us to make the next mistake. The night was the worst. The fog wrapped around us like a living shroud, dense and suffocating. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made us flinch. I didn't sleep. None of us did. Each of us took turns keeping watch, but even that brought no comfort. The mountain seemed aware, watching us, waiting. By morning, we were exhausted. Our food was nearly gone, and the trail, or what should have been the trail, was nowhere in sight. Every direction looked the same, a blur of mist and trees that seemed to move when we weren't looking. "Arif, do you hear that?" Saba whispered, her eyes wide and hollowed with fear. I strained to listen. At first, there was nothing, just the wind. Then I did, a faint murmur, like voices carried on the breeze. They were soft, overlapping, impossible to distinguish at first. But gradually, I made out the words. Names. Names of people I knew. People who weren't here. Reza, Tanvir, Saba, Laila, Arif. I froze, my blood turning to ice. The voices weren't random. They were calling us by name. Not just calling, beckoning. "Stay calm," I said, trying to sound steadier than I felt. "It's probably just the wind, or echoes, or something. Don't panic." But Reza shook his head. "No, this isn't normal. Look at the fog. Look around. It's moving differently, like it's shaping itself." The fog swirled unnaturally, curling around the trees and our legs, thickening in patterns that shouldn't exist. Shadows flickered within it, too large, too deliberate. For the first time, I felt that we weren't walking through a forest. We were walking through something alive, and that something was aware of us. Then came the hallucinations. At first, subtle. I saw Layla standing just off the trail, waving at me, smiling. But when I reached her, there was nothing, just fog. Then Saba swore she saw her reflection in a puddle, but the reflection wasn't her. It was older, twisted, eyes hollowed, screaming silently. Tanvir finally broke. "I'm done," he shouted, flailing. "I'm done with this mountain. We're going back." Back. There was no back. Every path we tried to retrace led us deeper into the mist. Landmarks repeated themselves, trees mirrored themselves, and the faint trail markers vanished when we looked directly at them. It was as if the mountain had rewritten itself around us. Hours, or maybe it was days, passed in that fog. Hunger gnawed at our bellies, thirst parched our throats, and exhaustion threatened to crumble our minds. The whispers continued, now layered and insistent. Some were our friends' voices, calling us to follow them. Others were distorted, accusing, mocking, whispering secrets none of us could understand. I stumbled over a root and landed hard on the damp earth. When I looked up, I froze. Reza, who had been beside me, was gone. "Reza?" I called, panic surging. The fog swallowed my voice. A faint laugh echoed back. His backpack lay abandoned, straps smeared with dirt. No sign of him. Saba grabbed my arm, eyes wide. It took him," she whispered. "It's like it wants us." One by one. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy to. We kept moving, blindly, hoping the fog would end. hoping the mountain would relent. And then I saw it. A figure, far ahead in the mist, just standing, tall, impossibly thin, with pale skin that reflected the dull light. It didn't move, didn't breathe, or at least it didn't appear to, but I felt its presence like a weight pressing down on my chest. I shouted, tried to run toward it, but the ground shifted beneath me. Branches twisted, roots snared my feet, and the figure was gone the moment I reached the spot. "It's playing with us," Tanvir said, voice shaking. It's not real, or maybe it is. I don't know anymore." The whispers turned louder, urgent now, almost deafening. "Follow. Come closer. You belong." We huddled together as the fog thickened around us. Shapes moved in the distance, figures mimicking our friends, shadows darting, always at the edge of sight. My mind was fraying. Every scream from our group, every lost friend, every whisper and distorted figure made reality feel like sand slipping through my fingers. By late afternoon, we stumbled into a clearing unlike any we'd seen. In the center stood a massive tree, its bark blackened and twisted. Carvings, deep and jagged, covered its surface. Symbols, names, dates. Some of the names were familiar. Some weren't, Saba gasped. It's a record," she whispered, "of everyone. Everyone who came here." I ran my hands over the bark, feeling the grooves, the rough edges. The symbols seemed almost to pulse, a subtle vibration under my fingertips. My heart pounded. The fog swirled unnaturally around the tree, shadows creeping along the roots as if alive. And then I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, coming from all directions at once. No one spoke. We didn't move. The mountain, or whatever dwelled in it, was closing in. Tanvir whispered, voice trembling, "It wants us to look at it." I didn't want to, but I had no choice. The fog parted slightly and I saw them. Dozens of figures emerging from the mist, all pale, thin, with hollow eyes and twisted expressions. Some were children, some were adults. All of them lost, all of them silent witnesses to the mountain's hunger. The whispers grew into voices, full sentences now, urgent and pleading. "Join us. Don't leave. Stay. Forever." Saba screamed. Tanvir covered his ears. I tried to pull them away, but the ground beneath us shifted again, and we were surrounded. The figures were close now, almost tangible, brushing against our skin like icy fingers. Their eyes bore into ours, and I realized we weren't just being watched. We were being judged, tested, consumed. Night fell, and the mountain revealed its true hunger. Shadows twisted. Figures flickered in and out of sight. Whispers became screams. And the fog. The fog became a wall. We were trapped inside it, isolated from the world we knew. Every attempt to leave failed. Paths vanished. The forest closed in. The mountain, it was alive. We spent the night in a tight circle, trembling, terrified, listening to the voices, the footsteps, the whispers. By dawn, only 4 of us remained: Arif, Saba, Tanvir, and Layla. The others were gone, vanished without trace. And the mountain, it was still watching, still hungry, still waiting, and I realized, with a cold, sinking certainty, this was just the beginning. The morning fog barely lifted, leaving the forest thick and suffocating. Every tree looked the same, every shadow shifted unnaturally. We stumbled forward, worn, parched, and terrified. The mountain seemed to mock our efforts, paths that should have led down twisting back into the mist. Then, as if drawn by some unholy force, we found it. A hut, not just any hut, ancient, wooden, crumbling, with dark stains across the walls. The roof sagged, and the windows were jagged openings like broken eyes watching us. Something about it felt wrong, but we had no choice. We were too exhausted to keep wandering. Maybe someone lives here? Tanvir suggested, though his voice trembled. Or maybe no one lives here. For a reason, I said, my gut twisting. We approached cautiously. The door creaked when we pushed it open, and a foul, earthy smell hit us immediately. Rotting wood, damp earth, and something far worse beneath it. The interior was small and dark. Moonlight, or what passed for moonlight through the fog, flickered on the walls, revealing shelves lined with objects that made my stomach turn. Animal skulls, human bones arranged in patterns, old photographs, yellowed and torn, showing hikers frozen in the forest. Some smiling, some screaming, all with eyes that seemed wrong. Symbols carved into the wooden beams matched the ones we had seen on the tree and the stone marker. Saba gasped. "Oh my God, it's a ritual. Something—" "Shh," Layla hissed. "Don't make noise. Don't call attention. Attention." That word alone made me shiver. The mountain was listening. The forest outside the hut felt alive, shifting. Shadows moved just beyond the broken windows, figures that disappeared the moment we tried to focus on them. Reza was gone. He had vanished somewhere in the fog, taken by this cursed place. Tanvir's bravado had long since vanished. He just shivered in a corner, staring at the objects with wide eyes. I stepped closer to the wall covered in photographs. Faces stared back at me, some familiar, some unrecognizable. I recognized the terrified expression on one figure, and my blood ran cold. It looked like me, but older, hollow-eyed, broken. What is this place?" Saba whispered. It's a trap," I said, though the words felt insufficient. "This mountain, it feeds on people. It remembers them, records them." The hut groaned under the weight of time, or maybe something else. The floor creaked, and I turned just in time to see shadows flicker across the wall. Figures moving inside the room, just beyond perception. They weren't animals. They weren't humans. Not entirely. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, following our every movement. Then came the sound that will haunt me forever. A low, guttural whisper, almost a growl. It spoke in a language I didn't know, but the meaning was clear. Hunger, demand, possession. I grabbed Saba's arm. "We need to leave, now!" We bolted for the door, but the fog outside had thickened into an impenetrable wall. Paths that had led us here no longer existed. It was as if the mountain itself had erased our escape. Figures emerged from the fog, pale, twisted, hollow-eyed, silent witnesses of previous victims. Some looked like humans, some like shadows, all watching, all waiting. One of the figures stepped closer. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. And then, in a voice that was both my own and not my own, it whispered, "Stay, stay, stay forever." I turned, ready to fight, but the others froze. Layla screamed as the figure vanished into the mist. The hut seemed to breathe around us, the walls groaning, the floor quivering beneath our feet. We huddled together, realizing that our very presence here was a violation of something ancient, something that had rules we didn't understand. The hut wasn't just a building, it was a shrine, a record, a warning. And the mountain outside, it was the guardian. Night fell. The temperature dropped, and the shadows grew thicker. We didn't dare sleep. Every snap of a twig outside made us jump. Every whisper in the fog made our hearts pound. The hut, which had seemed like a refuge, now felt like a cage. By the early hours of the morning, we knew it. One of us wouldn't survive this night. The mountain demanded a sacrifice, and the forest around us seemed to pulse with hunger. The whispers became voices now, pleading, mocking, accusing. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, and I realized, with an icy certainty, that the mountain didn't just trap people. It consumed their very essence. Their fear, their memories, their souls. It devoured everything. We stayed awake, huddled together, the air thick with dread. And in the distance, through the broken windows, I saw movement. A shadow detaching itself from the forest, gliding toward us, silent and deliberate. The mountain had chosen tonight, and we were next. By morning, we had no illusions left. The hut had given us nothing but temporary shelter, a brief pause in the mountain's relentless grip. We had eaten the last of our snacks the night before, our water nearly gone, and every muscle in our bodies ached from exhaustion and fear. We stepped outside, and the fog was thicker than ever, curling around the trees in unnatural, writhing shapes. It wasn't just mist, it was alive. Each step forward felt like trudging through some viscous substance, slowing us, forcing us to keep moving despite the cold and fatigue. "Which way?" Saba asked, her voice trembling. I don't know," I admitted. Reza was gone. Tanvir and Layla were clinging to me, eyes darting into the fog. The mountain had erased all familiar paths. Every tree, every rock, every twist of the trail looked exactly the same. And then I saw it. A shadow, thin and elongated, stretching across the fog like black smoke. It didn't move like a person, and yet it moved with intention, gliding closer with every step we took. "Do you see that?" Tanvir whispered, clutching my arm. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, it's following us." We started walking faster, trying to keep our distance, but the shadow mirrored us, twisting through the trees in impossible ways, sometimes appearing behind us, sometimes ahead, sometimes to the sides, as if it could bend reality itself. The forest seemed alive, responding to our fear. Branches reached out to snag our clothes, roots tripped us, and every time we thought we were escaping, the trail looped back, returning us to where the shadow had first appeared. Then the whispers began again, louder this time, almost coherent. "You cannot leave. You belong. You will join us." I felt my mind begin to unravel. Every sound, every flicker of movement in the fog, every distorted voice eroded our grip on reality. Tanvir began muttering to himself, repeating names we didn't recognize, his eyes wide and unseeing. And then we saw them. Figures emerging from the trees. Not shadows this time, but humanoid forms, pale, hollow-eyed, twisted in unnatural ways. Some had limbs too long, faces too thin, mouths stretching in impossible angles. They didn't run. They glided toward us silently, deliberately. Layla screamed and grabbed my arm. "We can't stay here." We ran blindly, tripping over roots, slamming into trees, lungs burning, hearts hammering. The figures glided after us, unhurried, patient predators. One reached out a hand. It wasn't fully human, bone protruding from knuckles, skin pale and veined, and the fog twisted around it like liquid. We stumbled into another clearing, our legs failing, our minds fraying. The figures paused at the edge, watching, waiting. I caught my breath and scanned the area. That's when I saw it. Another hut, smaller this time, but similarly ancient, blackened by time. It was a grotesque mirror of the one we'd just fled. We have to try inside," I gasped, dragging the others toward it. Inside, the air was thick and heavy. Cobwebs clung to every corner, and the smell of decay was overpowering. On the walls, more carvings, more symbols, more photographs. Some of the faces looked vaguely familiar, distorted by fear and time. But the real horror was the floor. Shadows moved across it as if alive, stretching and twisting toward us, crawling like living ink. I could hear the whispers again, now screaming, echoing off the walls. "Join! Join! Join!" I grabbed a plank to defend myself, but it felt useless. The shadows didn't obey physics. They slithered over everything, crawling into corners, seeping through cracks in the floorboards. Then came movement outside. The figures in the trees had not followed us in, but they were circling, surrounding the hut, Unrelenting, silent, patient. Tanvir's voice broke the silence. We're trapped. There's no way out. I nodded grimly, heart pounding. Then we survive until morning. If we can, hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning here. The shadows seemed to pulse with anticipation. The figures outside occasionally glanced in, as if testing us, taunting us. Every creak of the hut, every whisper, every shifting shadow made our skin crawl. By dawn, we realized something terrible. The mountain didn't just want us to fear it. It wanted us to surrender. Our minds, our sanity, our very essence. It was feeding on all of it. And I understood, with a clarity I wished I didn't have, the mountain was alive, and it had already claimed many before us. The hut was not refuge. It was a trap, a way station for the lost, a record for the mountain to remember its victims. We were next. The morning light was a dull gray through the fog, offering no warmth, no comfort. We stepped outside the second hut, exhausted and hollow-eyed. Our bodies ached, our mouths were dry, and every step felt heavier than the last. But worse than that, worse than hunger, thirst, or fatigue, was the creeping uncertainty in our minds. We couldn't remember how we had arrived at this part of the mountain. The trail behind us had vanished, erased by the thick, ever-shifting fog. Even the second hut, our temporary refuge, seemed like a memory borrowed from a dream. Tanvir paused mid-step, staring at a tree, his lips trembling. Wait! Were we… I don't remember. What don't you remember? I asked, though I could feel the same dread creeping up my spine. He shook his head violently. I don't remember. Some of us. Some of you. I don't even… Were we here before? I swallowed hard. Panic welled up inside me. He wasn't the only one. Saba and Layla looked just as confused, just as terrified. Our memories were slipping, dissolving like sand through fingers. Faces, voices, events, things we were certain of, were becoming hazy. It wasn't just disorientation. It was deliberate. The mountain wasn't content with fear. It was erasing us, slowly severing the ties to our past, to each other. I tried to focus, forcing myself to remember. Reza, he was gone. Layla and Saba. Yes, they were here. Tanvir was here. I was here. But even that certainty felt unstable, fragile. We pressed forward, trying to find the trail. Every direction looked the same. Twisted trees, thick fog, shadows that shifted when we looked away. At one point, we thought we recognized a rock formation, a landmark. But when we reached it, it was wrong. Twisted, crooked, as if the mountain itself had rearranged the landscape while we weren't looking. Then the whispers began again, low, insistent, now speaking in fragments of our own memories, distorted and twisted. You forgot. You betrayed. You didn't. I staggered, covering my ears. They weren't just voices. They were our memories turned against us. Accusations, half-formed thoughts, memories that weren't ours. I saw glimpses of Reza, smiling at something I couldn't place. Or was it a hallucination? I couldn't tell anymore. Saba screamed suddenly. It's him! What? Who? I demanded. A figure emerged from the fog. Pale, skeletal, familiar. Its face was Reza's, but wrong. Hollow-eyed, grinning unnaturally, distorted. He, or it, spoke in a voice that was both his and not his. You forgot me. You left me. You'll join me. I wanted to run, but the ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. Roots twisted like snakes, branches whipped at our faces, and the fog thickened, swallowing everything behind us. The trail had vanished completely. Time had no meaning anymore. Hours could have been minutes. Days could have been hours. The mountain toyed with us. Every step forward felt like regression. Every path taken led us back to where we had started, or somewhere we couldn't even recognize. And then came the visions. I saw Layla, smiling and alive, walking through a sunlit forest, then screaming as shadows wrapped around her, dragging her into darkness. Saba appeared, calling my name, pleading for help, then disappearing into mist. Tanvir laughed manically, but the laughter was hollow, echoing through the fog, repeating, stretching, mocking. I felt my own mind fraying. Who I was, where I came from, what I had done. Everything was dissolving. The mountain wasn't just trapping our bodies, it was consuming our minds, erasing us piece by piece. I clung to reality by sheer force of will, repeating my own name, trying to remember what I knew, who I was, what had happened to Reza. But even that was slipping, my thoughts twisted. I couldn't tell dreams from reality. Shadows moved in corners of my vision that weren't there moments ago. Figures whispered secrets that were too familiar, things I didn't even know I remembered. By late afternoon, only 4 of us remained. Me, Saba, Layla, and Tanvir. Every step forward was agony, every breath a struggle. We had lost Reza, vanished into the mountain's hunger. And worse, our memories of him were fragmented, replaced with something we couldn't understand. The forest opened into a clearing, a strange, unnatural stillness hanging over it. At the center, a massive stone altar, slick with moss and damp, surrounded by carvings and symbols. The air was thick, almost suffocating, vibrating with the mountain's presence. I realized, with a cold certainty, that this was where the mountain kept its records, not just carvings or huts, but a memory of everyone who had ever entered, everyone who had been consumed, and it wanted us to add our names. The shadows emerged from the edges of the clearing, figures we could almost recognize as our missing friends, twisted, hollow, silent. Their eyes reflected the fog and the light in ways that made my stomach turn. The mountain had prepared them as warnings, as guardians, as echoes of terror. Tanvir collapsed to his knees. "We're doomed," he whispered, his voice cracking. I gritted my teeth, clinging to the last strands of myself. "No," I said. "We survive. Somehow. We have to survive." But deep down, I knew. The mountain had already begun to consume us. Our minds were fading, our memories being rewritten, our identities stolen. It wasn't just a physical trap anymore, it was a psychological one. And the mountain was patient, eternal, unforgiving, and it was hungry. The fog never lifted. Even as we stumbled forward, each step heavier than the last, the mountain seemed to stretch endlessly around us. We were lost in more than just geography now. We were lost in time, in memory, in reality itself. That's when I saw it. A dark opening in the side of the mountain, partially hidden behind twisted trees and thick mist. A cave. Ancient, jagged, uninviting. But something about it drew me. Something primal. "Arif, are you crazy? We shouldn't—" Tanvir started, but I ignored him. The others followed reluctantly, driven by the same sense of inevitability I felt. Every instinct screamed danger, yet every nerve in my body told me that this cave might be the key. Perhaps it held the answers, or the only chance we had left. The entrance was massive, jagged stone like teeth, swallowing the light. The air inside was thick, damp, smelling of earth, rot, and something far older. The walls were carved with symbols, similar to those we had seen on the trees, on the huts, and in the stone marker. But here, they were more intricate, almost alive. Shifting in the flickering light of our flashlights, Saba whispered, trembling, It's old, ancient, too old." We ventured deeper. The cave widened, opening into a massive chamber. The floor was uneven, scattered with bones, cracked pottery, and more photographs, hundreds of them, faces frozen in terror. Some looked familiar. Some looked like us. I swallowed hard. This is what the mountain keeps. This is its memory. The walls were etched with carvings depicting rituals, sacrifices, and shadowy figures towering over humans. It was clear now. This mountain had fed on people for centuries. Hikers, villagers, travelers. Anyone who wandered too deep, anyone who didn't obey its unseen rules. The cave was a record, a shrine, and a warning all in one. Layla shivered. Why does it do this? I didn't have an answer. I only knew the truth was worse than I could imagine. The mountain wasn't just haunted. It was alive. It consumed fear, memory, and life itself, leaving only echoes and shadows behind. Then we heard movement, slow, deliberate, echoing off the stone walls. Figures emerged from the shadows, pale, thin, twisted, like the missing students we had seen in the huts and forest. Some were half human, half shadow, others mere silhouettes, but all of them bore the same hollow, accusing eyes. The whispers began again, louder this time, filling the chamber. You should have never come. You belong. You will remain. We tried to retreat, but the entrance had vanished. The cave walls seemed to stretch endlessly, reshaping themselves. The mountain wasn't just alive. It was a predator with infinite patience, controlling space itself. I shined my flashlight across the chamber and saw a pedestal at its center, carved from black stone. On it lay a small, ancient book, pages yellowed, symbols etched in ink that seemed to move subtly as if alive. Trembling, I reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the cover, visions exploded in my mind. Hikers from centuries past, villagers lured into the mountain, terrified faces frozen in time. Rituals performed in its honor. The mountain fed on fear, but also on guilt, shame, and despair, every emotion that tethered humans to their mortality. I stumbled back, breathless. It knows us, knows our fears, knows our weaknesses, Tanvir groaned. We're next, aren't we? Yes, I admitted, voice shaking. But maybe we can survive if we understand it. If we play by its rules, maybe. The shadows surged forward, pressing closer. Hollow eyes reflected our terror, waiting for us to falter. The whispers became almost deafening, repeating fragments of our lives, mistakes, and fears. Saba cried out, collapsing. It wants us. It wants us to break. I clenched my fists. We won't. Not yet. As we explored the cave further, I realized something chilling. The mountain didn't just record its victims, it shaped reality to test them. Every fear, every hallucination, every shadow we had seen in the forest and huts was part of its trap. It was teaching, punishing, feeding, and the ultimate truth, the secret it hid, was more horrifying than we could imagine. Near the far wall of the chamber, we found a large carving, different from the others. It depicted the mountain itself, twisting, alive, filled with eyes, mouths, and hands, consuming humans endlessly. At its base were the symbols we had seen everywhere. The stone markers, the huts, the trees, interconnected like a map, showing the flow of victims through its domains. The mountain, it's a predator, I whispered. Not just a mountain, it's an entity, Layla trembled. An entity? You mean it's alive? Like conscious? Yes, I said, my voice low. It's been alive for centuries, feeding on humans, learning from them, trapping them. And it's patient. We have maybe hours, maybe minutes, before it decides what to do with us. We backed away from the wall, hearts pounding. The shadows surged closer. The cave walls seemed to pulse, breathing, and I realized something worse than death. The mountain didn't just consume bodies, it consumed reality. Minds, memories, identities. Our only hope, I knew, was to escape. But the mountain would not allow it easily, and as the shadows closed in, as the whispers escalated to screams, I understood the final, terrifying truth. The mountain's secret was simple and horrifying. It was eternal, and it had already chosen us. The cave's oppressive darkness seemed to press against us from every angle. Every shadow, every whisper, every shifting wall reminded us that the mountain was no longer just a place. It was a living predator. We had no choice. Staying meant certain death or losing ourselves entirely. We had to descend, somehow, somewhere, and survive. But even the act of leaving felt impossible. The cave entrance behind us had vanished, replaced by walls that pulsed and shifted like flesh. "Which way?" Saba asked, voice trembling, eyes scanning the fog that seemed to seep into the cave itself. I clenched my jaw. "Down! We have to go down. Somewhere. Anything lower." We stumbled through the twisting tunnels, the walls slick with moisture, symbols crawling faintly in the corners of our vision. Shadows darted and stretched in impossible ways. Every turn seemed to loop us back to where we'd started, and the whispers, now full-throated, almost screaming, mocked our attempts to find a way out. "You cannot leave. You belong. You will remain." Minutes or hours passed. Time had no meaning. Our minds were fraying. Tanvir muttered incoherently, repeating fragments of memories that weren't his. Saba tried to hold my arm, but even that felt unreal, as if her grip could dissolve at any moment. Then, as if in answer to some unspoken prayer, the tunnel widened into a jagged stairway carved into stone, descending steeply. Cold air hit us, fresher than anything we had breathed in days, carrying faint whispers of wind instead of voices. This might be it," I said, though I didn't know if hope was foolish or necessary. We descended cautiously. The stairway spiraled downward, darkness thickening with every step. The mountain groaned around us, a low, resonant sound that vibrated through the stone, through our bones. Shadows flickered at the edges of vision, and I could swear the stairs themselves shifted slightly, as if testing our resolve. Halfway down, I stumbled over a loose stone. My flashlight illuminated a figure ahead, tall, skeletal, with hollow eyes reflecting the dim light. Tanvir screamed and tried to run past it, but it didn't move. It simply watched, patient, eternal, like the mountain itself had given it life. We froze. The figure tilted its head, as if considering us, then slowly receded into the darkness. Every instinct screamed at us to flee, and we did, hearts hammering, feet barely finding purchase on the slick stone. Finally, we reached a landing that opened into a steep cliff, partially obscured by fog rolling up from below. A faint path wound downward, jagged and perilous, disappearing into shadows. There's a way down," I said, voice barely audible. We can make it." The mountain wasn't finished yet. As we moved along the path, the fog thickened, twisting and curling around us like fingers. Shadows flickered, forming humanoid shapes that mirrored us. Layla screamed as she saw a figure walking ahead, mimicking her exact movements, grinning hollowly. It's following us," she cried. I forced us forward, gripping her hand tightly. "Ignore it. Keep moving." The descent became a nightmare. The path narrowed, jagged rocks threatening to topple us into the abyss below. Every misstep brought visions, memories we didn't recognize, faces of the lost, fragments of lives consumed by the mountain. The whispers intensified, now screaming in unison. "Stop! Join us! Belong! Forever!" We pressed on, knowing that stopping meant surrender, that the mountain wanted us to succumb, that it fed on our fear as much as our flesh. Hours, or an eternity, later, the path finally leveled, opening into a small plateau. The fog thinned slightly, revealing faint light in the distance. Freedom or another trap? I dared a glance back. The shadows and figures we had feared had paused at the cliff edge, unmoving, watching us go. Hollow eyes reflected the dim light, waiting, patient, eternal. Tanvir collapsed, shivering violently. I can't! You can, I said firmly, forcing us forward. We survive. We make it out. We don't stop now. The plateau led to a narrow ridge descending further, the mountain groaning and shifting around us. Every step was perilous, yet we moved with determination born of desperation. Behind us, the fog thickened again, the whispers fading but still present. A promise that the mountain was eternal, that it would wait for the next wanderers to trespass. Finally, we reached the base. Trees opened into a clearing, the mist breaking into dawn's pale light. We were battered, bleeding, exhausted, but alive. For the first time, I breathed in the open air, cold and sharp, smelling pine and wet earth. But the mountain remained, looming above, silent and eternal. Watching, waiting. We had survived, this time. But I knew the truth, the terrifying knowledge that would haunt me forever. The mountain never forgets, never forgives, and it is patient. One day, it would claim more, as it had claimed all before us. And the whispers, they would continue, echoing in the wind, waiting for the next foolish souls to climb Shonar Pahar. We stumbled away from the mountain, shadows lingering at the edges of our vision, hearts still racing. Behind us, the peak rose, silent yet alive, a predator resting until its hunger awakened once again. The forest outside the mountain was deceptively calm. Sunlight pierced through the treetops in pale beams, birds chirped, and a gentle breeze stirred the leaves. For the first time in what felt like forever, we could hear real sounds, normal sounds, but none of us felt safe. Our bodies ached, our minds were frayed, and every instinct screamed that the mountain was still watching, still waiting. The shadows may have been left behind in the fog, but the whispers, they lingered, faint, distant, like a pulse echoing through our heads. "Are we actually out?" Layla whispered, her voice shaky. "I think so," I replied, though doubt gnawed at me. "We need to get to the village below, just keep moving!" Tanvir stumbled beside us, eyes darting nervously at every tree, every shadow. "It's too quiet. Too normal. It's lying. It's tricking us." We followed a faint trail, the forest thinning as we descended. The sun grew stronger, warming our chilled bodies, but a sense of unease never left. Every time I looked back at the peak of Shonar Pahar, it loomed like a dark sentinel, silently observing, patient. Hours passed. We moved in silence, fear keeping us together and alert. Our hunger and exhaustion were secondary to the dread that clawed at the edges of our minds. Finally, we saw it. The edge of the village, smoke rising from chimneys, the faint sound of human activity. Relief surged through me. We were alive! We had survived the mountain. But as we stepped onto the village path, something felt off. The villagers moved slowly, almost deliberately, their faces pale, eyes too still. When we spoke, they didn't respond. We saw children playing near the edge of the forest, but their laughter was hollow, echoing unnaturally. A woman approached, wearing simple clothes, hands folded in front of her. Her eyes, though human in shape, were unnervingly dark, almost void-like. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "The mountain doesn't let go easily." I froze. My stomach sank. What do you mean?" She tilted her head, eyes glinting unnaturally. "It remembers. Every step you took. Every fear. Every shadow. It doesn't just consume bodies. It lingers. Those who leave, they carry part of it with them." Saba clutched her head, moaning. I feel strange, different. I realized she was right. The fog, the shadows, the whispers, they hadn't entirely left us. Something had followed. Something had attached itself. A piece of the mountain embedded in our very beings. The villagers' faces blurred slightly, twisting like water. The children's laughter warped into a sinister chant. Return. Belong forever. I grabbed Saba and Layla, running blindly down the village path toward the main road. Tanvir stumbled, tripping over a root, and I pulled him up. We ran past houses, past fields, ignoring the murmurs that seemed to seep from every shadow, every tree. Finally, we reached the edge of the village, where a dirt road led to the highway. Cars passed, and a driver honked, stopping to ask if we were all right. For a moment, it felt like safety. But as we approached the car, I glanced back. Shonar Pahar loomed in the distance, silent and eternal. And at the peak, faint but unmistakable, a shadow moved, twisting unnaturally, watching, waiting. I felt it then, deep inside me. A cold tendril of dread curling through my chest. The mountain hadn't released us. Not fully, not ever. The driver looked at us, concern growing. "Are you all okay?" he asked. I forced a smile, trying to hide the terror in my eyes. "Yeah, we're fine, just lost in the forest." As we drove away, the village fading behind us, I felt the whispers begin again, faint but insistent. Names, ours, echoed in my mind, faces of the lost. The shadows we had seen flickered at the edges of my vision. I realized with a shiver that the mountain had changed us. Part of it remained inside us, a seed of hunger, a memory of fear. And one day, we might not resist. The mountain waits, always, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Weeks had passed since we left the mountain. Civilization, with its noise, sunlight, and movement, should have comforted us. But nothing felt normal. Every shadow, every whisper of wind, every flicker of light reminded us of Shonar Pahar. We tried to talk about it, tried to convince ourselves it was over, but none of us could. Tanvir refused to leave his house, muttering to himself about shapes in the corners of his room. Layla wouldn't sleep without a light on. Saba avoided mirrors, claiming she sometimes saw figures behind her reflection. I thought I had escaped. I thought the mountain was behind me. I was wrong. It began subtly. Dreams first. I dreamt of the fog, thick and suffocating, curling around me like fingers. The shadows moved in my dreams exactly as they had in the mountain. I could hear the whispers, soft at first, then louder. "You belong," we remember. We wait. Then it started during the day. A flicker in the corner of my eye. A shadow that didn't belong. Faces in the crowd on the street, pale and hollow-eyed, resembling those we had seen in the caves. The mountain's hunger had followed us. Its presence wasn't physical. It was a seed planted in our minds, a tether we couldn't sever. I met with Saba one evening. She looked different, hollowed out, yet alert. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "Even now. It's inside us." "Yes," I whispered. "I thought leaving would end it, but it hasn't. It's always watching, always waiting." We tried to tell someone, anyone, about what had happened, but the words felt inadequate. Who would believe a story of a living mountain, shadows, whispers, and lost friends? People would call us crazy, and maybe we were, but the truth didn't care. One night I woke to a sound outside my window, a soft scratching, faint but deliberate. I peered out and the street was empty. Except, there it was, a shadow, elongated and unnatural, moving at the edge of the streetlight's glow. It paused, turned toward me, and in that instant, I recognized the hollow eyes of Reza, twisted, consumed, yet unmistakably him. The whispers began again, now clearer than ever. "You cannot escape. You are ours. You will return. I stumbled back, heart racing. The truth hit me like a thunderclap. Shonar Pahar never let go. It didn't just feed on those who entered. It left pieces of itself behind, marking its victims, haunting them, waiting until it could reclaim them. I called Saba. She answered immediately, her voice trembling. "It's here," she whispered. "I saw it. Outside my window, watching." We understood, finally, that survival was temporary. The mountain had patience, and time was on its side. It could wait days, months, even years, and eventually, it would reclaim what it had sown. I looked at the city lights, the distant hum of life, and realized the mountain was no longer confined to its peak. Its influence reached us everywhere. The shadows, the whispers, the hunger, they were eternal. And in the distance, through my window, I saw the fog curling along the horizon. Distant, but moving, patient, and relentless. Shonar Pahar had won. Not entirely. Not yet, but it had planted its seed in us. And one day, it would claim the rest. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Some mountains, once entered, can never be left behind. And Shonar Pahar waits. Thanks for watching this terrifying, scary story. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. If you've ever had a creepy experience, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Last but not the least, before leaving, please check out the horror story ebook. Link in the description. See you in the next one. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the shadows. Good night.